It's a real story. Warning: do not read this story if you are scared of the dark or what lurking in it. Dust motes danced in the single shaft of light piercing the gloom of the attic. Elias, a young historian with a thirst for the obscure, coughed, pulling a musty sheet off a forgotten trunk. He was not looking for treasure, but answers. His great-aunt in journals spoke of a, and quote, black book, and quote, a family secret whispered in hushed tones. The journal and final entry was a frantic scribble, and quote, it end here. Do not open. Ever, and quote. A chill snaked down Elias' spine. He found it nestled beneath a pile of moth-eaten clothes, a volume bound in something that felt disturbingly like dried skin, its pages thick and brittle, emanating a subtle, sickening warmth. The air in the attic grew heavy, the silence broken only by an almost imperceptible whisper like dry leaves skittering across a cold floor. It seemed to emanate from the book itself. Curiosity warred with a rising tide of dread. Hesitantly, Elias ran a finger over the cover. The texture was undeniably organic, sending a shiver through him. He opened the book. The pages were not paper, but something darker, almost black, with a strange, oily sheen. The writing was not ink, but intricate, glowing symbols that pulsed with a faint, unsettling light. They seemed to writhe on the page, almost alive. He could not understand the language, yet the symbols stirred something deep within him, a sense of ancient power and profound wrongness. A faint, sickly sweet odor filled the air, like decaying flowers and something metallic. He felt a strange pull, a morbid fascination that overshadowed his initial fear. This was not just a book, it was a gateway. That night, sleep was impossible. The glowing symbols seemed burned into Elias and eyelids. He heard scratching at his window, faint at first, then growing more insistent. He told himself it was just a branch in the wind, but the rhythm was too deliberate, too knowing. A shadow fell across his bedroom door, too tall, too thin to be human. A low growl rumbled from the other side. Terror seized him. He wasn't hashtag 39. T alone. The book, lying open on his desk, pulsed with a brighter, more malevolent light. He realized with chilling certainty that opening it had invited something into his life, something that had been waiting just beyond the veil. The scratching and growling continued throughout the night, a constant, terrifying reminder of the presence outside. Elias didn't and hashtag 39 dare move. As dawn approached, the sounds faded, leaving behind a heavy, unnatural silence. Exhausted and shaken, he looked at the book. The glowing symbols seemed to mock him. He knew, deep down, that he couldn't and hashtag 39 simply close it and pretend it never happened. The knowledge within its pages, however, forbidden, held a terrible power, and the presence outside was a consequence of that power. He had a choice: succumb to fear or delve deeper, hoping to find a way to control the forces he had unleashed. Driven by a desperate need to understand, Elias began to pore over the book and hashtag 39's pages, searching for any recognizable patterns or symbols. He found a section with diagrams that seemed to depict strange, distorted forms. Beside them were sequences of the glowing symbols. He felt a strange compulsion to trace them with his finger. As he did, the air grew colder, the light in the room dimmed, and the familiar sickly sweet odor intensified. The symbols on the page flared, and a low hum filled the room, vibrating in his very bones. He was performing an incantation, though he didn't and hashtag 39 know what for. A thrill of fear and exhilaration shot through him. The hum faded, leaving an unnerving silence. Elias felt a presence in the room, not the scratching outside, but something closer, heavier. He looked around, his heart pounding. In the corner of the room, where the shadows were deepest, a form began to coalesce. It was amorphous at first, like swirling smoke, but it slowly took on a vaguely humanoid shape. It was tall, impossibly thin, and its eyes were two pinpricks of malevolent red light. It didn't end hashtag 39 move, but Elias felt its gaze upon him, a chilling weight that pressed down on his chest. He had summoned something, and it was watching him. The shadow in the corner remained, a silent, terrifying sentinel. Elias Kuden and hashtag 39. T sleep. Kuden and hashtag 39 T eat. His world had shrunk to the confines of his fear and the presence of the entity he had summoned. He returned to the book, desperate for answers, for a way to banish it. He found sections that seemed to be historical accounts, written in a language he was slowly beginning to decipher. They spoke of ancient rituals, of sacrifices, and of beings that existed just beyond the veil of reality. They also spoke of a family lineage, his own, and a long-forgotten pact made with these entities. His ancestors had, and hashtag 39. T just found the book. They had used it. The realization struck Elias like a physical blow. The black book was, and hashtag 39. T just a random artifact. It was a family heirloom, a legacy of dark magic and forbidden knowledge. His great-aunt and hashtag 39's fear, her cryptic warnings, suddenly made terrible sense. His family had been involved with these entities for generations, perhaps even responsible for bringing them into this world. The thought was horrifying, but it also ignited a spark of grim determination. If his family had unleashed this, perhaps there was a way for him to put it right. He had inherited not just a book, but a responsibility he never knew he had. The book hinted at the cost of using its power. The account spoke of users being consumed, their bodies twisted and their minds broken. The entities demanded a toll, a sacrifice. Elias looked at the shadow in the corner. Was that its price? His sanity? His life? He felt a growing sense of isolation. He couldn't, and hashtag 39. Tell anyone. Who would believe him? He was alone with the black book and the horrors it had unleashed. He had to find a way to control the power, to understand the price, before it consumed him completely. The line between knowledge and madness was blurring. He found another incantation, marked with symbols that seemed to vibrate with aggressive energy. The text spoke of, end quote, warding, end quote, desperate. Elias decided to try it. He traced the symbols, his hands trembling. The sickly sweet odor intensified, and the temperature in the room plummeted. The shadow in the corner recoiled, a low hiss escaping it. The symbols on the page flared, and a shimmering, almost invisible barrier seemed to ripple outwards from the book. It was working. He had a weapon, a defense. But the shadow didn't, and hashtag 39. Disappear. It merely retreated, its red eyes still fixed on him, filled with a chilling promise of return. The test was successful, but the battle was far from over. Despite the danger, Elias felt an increasing pull towards the black book. The knowledge it contained was intoxicating, promising power beyond imagination. He found sections on manipulating shadows, on bending minds, on seeing into other realms. The temptation to use these powers to fight back against the creeping dread was immense. He knew it was a dangerous path, a descent into the very darkness he feared, but the alternative, passive, waiting for the inevitable, was unbearable. The book whispered promises of control, of dominance, but the whispers were laced with a subtle, insidious poison. Days bled into nights. Elias barely slept, fueled by fear and the obsessive study of the book. The glowing symbols began to appear outside the book, shimmering on the walls, on his hands, in his reflection. He heard voices, low and sibilant, whispering his name, promising things he both desired and feared. The line between reality and the supernatural was dissolving. He was losing his grip, his mind becoming a battleground for forces he could not comprehend. The book was not just a source of knowledge, it was a parasite, feeding on his sanity. He found a chapter dedicated to the entity that haunted him. It spoke of beings from a dimension of pure shadow, drawn to places where the veil between worlds was thin. The black book, it seemed, was a key, a locus of power that weakened that veil. The entity was a, end quote, seeker, end quote, drawn to the energy released by the book and use. Its purpose was simple, to consume. to absorb the life force of those who dare to tamper with forbidden knowledge. It was not personal. It was instinct, a primal hunger. The realization offered no comfort, only a chilling understanding of his predicament. The book spoke of a way to banish a seeker, a ritual of binding and sacrifice. The text was vague, the symbols complex and dangerous. It required a, end quote, personal offering, end quote, something of immense value to the caster. Elias' blood ran cold. What could he sacrifice? His memories? His future? The thought of offering his own life crossed his mind, but the book hinted at a more insidious form of sacrifice, something that would leave him alive but irrevocably changed. The ritual was a gamble, a desperate last resort, but it was the only option the book offered for true banishment. The air crackled with energy. The shadow in the corner had grown, filling half the room. Its red eyes burned with an intense, focused hatred. The warding spell was almost gone, the shimmering barrier barely visible. Elias felt the entity immense power pressing against him, a tangible force that threatened to crush him. He knew he was running out of time. The ritual of sacrifice had to be performed now, before the seeker broke through and consumed him. The storm outside matched the turmoil within, wind howling and rain lashing against the windows. With trembling hands, Elias opened the book to the chapter on banishment. He began to trace the complex symbols, his voice a hoarse whisper as he spoke the ancient incantations. The sickly sweet odor intensified, so strong it made him gag. The glowing symbols on the page pulsed with a blinding light. The shadow in the corner shrieked, a sound that was both a roar of rage and a cry of pain. The room shook, objects flying off shelves. The veil between worlds was thinning, and the raw power of the other dimension was flooding in. The book demanded the personal offering. Elias looked around his room, at the things he cherished. A photograph of his family, a watch given to him by his grandfather. They felt trivial in the face of the cosmic horror before him. He needed something more profound, something that represented a part of himself. He looked at his hands, the hands that had opened the book, that had traced the incantations. With a gasp, he understood. The sacrifice was not an object. It was a part of his ability to interact with the world, his senses, his memories. He focused his will, offering a piece of his very being to bind the entity. As Elias made his offering, the glowing symbols surged with power. Chains of light erupted from the book, wrapping around the thrashing form of the seeker. It roared, a sound of unimaginable agony and fury. The shadow was forced back, compressed, contained within the shimmering binds. The sickly sweet odor began to dissipate, replaced by the scent of ozone and burning metal. The room was still shaking, but the immediate, crushing pressure of the entity presence lessened. He had bound it for now. The ritual was complete, but the cost. Exhausted and weak, Elias slumped against the wall. The room was a wreck, but the shadow in the corner was gone. The book lay open, its glowing symbols now faint and flickering. He felt different. A subtle numbness in his fingertips, a slight blurring of his vision, a gap in his memories. The sacrifice had taken its toll. The seeker was bound, but he knew it was not gone forever. The black book was still in his possession, its dark power still a threat. He had survived, but he was changed, and the silence that filled the room was no longer peaceful, but heavy with the knowledge that the horrors of the black book were never truly gone, merely waiting for the next time the veil was thinned. He closed the book, the leathery cover cold and unsettling beneath his touch, knowing his life would never be the same. The shadow was gone, but a part of it, a lingering dread, was now within him.